This is the story of a puppy named Sky. His mother gave him that name because on the day he was born, he looked up and cried softly, as if he were talking to the sky itself. Sky was the smallest of all his siblings. He was a bit weak, but incredibly gentle. He felt safest whenever he slept curled up close to his mother's warm body, just listening to the steady rhythm of her heartbeat. But one morning, everything changed. A noisy, rumbling truck stopped right near the roadside where they lived. People were shouting, there was chaos, confusion. Sky trembled with fear and hid beneath his mother's legs, seeking comfort. And then suddenly he was pushed aside. The truck moved away. The noise faded into the distance, and his mother, she never came back. Sky stood there for a very long time. His tiny legs shook uncontrollably. He sniffed the air, searching desperately for her smell, for the sound of her voice, for even just a glimpse of her shadow. But the road was empty. There was nothing but dust, smoke, and strangers passing by without a second glance. That day, Sky learned what loneliness felt like. It was a cold, empty feeling that settled deep in his tiny chest. Days turned into a blur of hardship. Hunger was a constant ache in his belly, making his already weak body even weaker. Sometimes he'd bravely search through piles of trash, hoping to find a forgotten scrap of food. Other times, he would see people walking by and follow them, wagging his tail with a flicker of hope in his eyes. But most of them just ignored him. Some shouted at him to get away. A few even kicked stones in his direction to scare him off. Sky didn't understand. He couldn't figure out why humans were so angry with someone so small and helpless. One afternoon, he was sitting in front of a shop, just too tired and exhausted to move another step. The shopkeeper came out and yelled, "Go away! Get out of here!" Sky lowered his head in submission and slowly, painfully, walked away. His tail, which once wagged with such optimism, no longer wagged at all. It just hung there, a symbol of his defeated spirit. But the nights were the hardest. Cold winds cut right through his thin fur, shaking his little body. The constant sound of cars and loud horns made him jump with fear. He found a small pile of old, discarded cloth and would curl up inside it, trying to make himself as small as possible. He'd close his eyes and dream of his mother, of her warmth and her love. In his dreams, he was safe. In his dreams, he was warm. But in reality, he was freezing. One night, a heavy rain began to fall. It was a cold, relentless downpour that flooded the streets. As he was trying to find shelter, Sky slipped and fell into a small, muddy ditch by the side of the road. He couldn't climb out. His leg was hurt, and a sharp pain shot through him every time he moved. He tried to cry for help, to bark or whine, but his voice was just too weak. The rain washed over his face, mixing with his tears, hiding his silent suffering from the world. Morning finally came. The rain had stopped. People started their day, walking by on the sidewalk. Rickshaws rattled past. Life, for everyone else, just went on. But no one noticed the small, shivering puppy lying in the ditch. No one even looked down. Sky's eyes were open, and he was looking up at the sky, just like he did on the day he was born. In his final moments, it felt as if a single thought passed through his mind. Maybe I wasn't useless. Maybe I just wasn't wanted. And then everything became silent. Hours later, an old woman walking by happened to glance down. She stopped. Tears welled up in her eyes as she knelt down and whispered, "Oh, you poor baby. If only I had come earlier." But time never waits for anyone. This is not just the story of Sky, it is the story of countless voiceless animals who suffer quietly every single day. They live among us, waiting for a moment of kindness, a gentle touch, a bowl of food kindness that, for so many, never comes. Sometimes all they need is just one person to care, one person to notice, one person to make a difference. Let's be that person. Let's be the kindness they are waiting for. Thank you for listening.